in mass, we're panicky and we're dangerous, and perhaps maybe they want to help us, but they can't help us because they're afraid that we'll attack them or consider them some sort of an enemy. And again, and another excellent example of the Twilight Zone is where the suburban area where the power gets shut off, and they start developing this paranoia. And this kid mentioned something about a comic book about the aliens invasion starting by them shutting off the power and the EMP pulse that knocks out telephones and radio. Then all of a sudden the cars started by themselves and lawnmowers started by themselves, and they turn on each other, and one of the guys shoots one of the neighbors thinking he's an alien, and then the aliens are off in the distance watching the whole thing and said, yeah, mankind's not ready for this yet.
Yeah, and there was another one too where the people lived in the town and they couldn't leave the town. They would go, drive so far, and then they couldn't go any farther. It was like a invisible barrier. And they tried figuring out how to get out of this town and all this stuff, these small group of people. And it turned out, they weren't, the town was like transported to an alien planet, and at the very end of the show, they show where the town used to be. It was a big crater. And these people didn't even realize they were abducted. The whole little town was abducted, and they're being watched, And the funny thing is they weren't even being watched by adults. They were being watched by a couple little kids. That was a really great episode because I wasn't expecting that twist there, and they were basically being observed like an ant farm, and of course at the end there the mother tells the children stop playing with your pets and come eat.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that's I mean, and like I said, that's and Twilight Zone could go both ways. I mean, that was always the cool thing with that show is it could go both ways. It could be the aliens could be sinister, or they could be trying to help us out. But again, show we are our own worst enemy here. They're trying to help us, but again, we get panicky and think, okay, they're trying to invade us, and they're trying to take away our our rights, our freedom, our lives, or whatever, and we automatically attack them. So that was always a really great show, though. It could go either way.
Well, put it this way: let's say you've never seen TV in your life before, okay, and you live. I'm not going to say you live off another planet, but you live in a place on this planet where you haven't had contact with anybody but your own little villagers, and that's it, right? But now all of a sudden you have a TV, okay? It just appeared in your dwelling. So you turn this TV on, right? And all of a sudden you start seeing all these weird shows, depending on what year it was, on TV. You'd be really scared. Now, just think about these aliens. We've been for the last 50 years, dumping, all these TV shows out in space. And, it takes a long time for that signal to reach wherever it ends up. So, you know what? Depending on what shows, it could be anything from, June Cleaver from Leave It to Beaver to, Combat. You remember Combat, the war show? Or the Monsters, or, Lost in Space, or some of these B movies we were talking about, or, all these killings and, like Chainsaw Massacre. What would they think of humans if they actually watched all that stuff? I would look at humans as, well, boy, they are nothing more than an ant.
Or they're a warlike, race, or, or just sick individuals. I mean, they got you're watching movies of them, humans eating other humans, and that would probably be that would definitely make you question whether or not you actually want to step foot on that planet and say, hey, we're here, we're going to share all of our technology and knowledge with you and everything. It'd be more like I want to avoid you like a plague until you can show me that you're not crazy.
Oh, yeah. But, I just, the technology alone, Roswell, supposedly like one of those aliens survived and we kept it alive as long as possible. And then supposedly we dissected it, took it all apart and see what made it tick. And I don't know if we killed it to do it or we started doing it while it was alive, but you know what? It's the same thing they're probably doing to us. We did it to it, if supposedly. So if we would do it to that, I'm sure they would do it to us, and probably a lot more. Because again, we were talking about people missing. Look at all the people who have gone missing in the national forests. Up to about 4 years ago, it was I lost track of it. It was like over 14,000 people went in the forest system in our country. It never came back out.
And that's to say, that maybe, they may never return. I mean, if they are alive somewhere, I mean, it's entirely possible that maybe they've been transported to another planet, kind of sort of like an ark kind of thing. Maybe they, move them to a different, maybe they have a certain selection. Maybe they have certain people that, okay, this person would be safe to take to, another Earth. Because I mean, we've, the Hubble has already spotted planets that are very similar to Earth. So I mean, what's to say that maybe they're not taking, in order to ensure the survival of the human race, taking them to, say, another planet and, dropping them off there and say, okay, don't do what you did to Earth, try doing something, constructive, work on, science and space travel and, or time travel or, looking at other dimensions or whatever. See, I actually watched a show on Sci-Fi Channel, and I think I want to say it was Sci-Fi. It could have been History Channel, but it was talking about different, like, parallel dimensions. And I've always thought it was kind of silly the way I always thought that, what if it's possible that our universe is kind of like a notebook, and each page is a different reality, like a different parallel dimension. And it could be like, say that everything up to this point is exactly the same except I didn't exist, or you didn't exist, or, the guy who lives next door to you didn't exist, or a guy that lives on 4th Street in New York didn't exist. But everything else is still the same. I mean, everything event-wise has happened up to this point is still exactly the same. And, I got thinking, I was like, wow, the possibilities could really be infinite. We can have an entire reality where everything is exactly the same except one person didn't exist or a group of people didn't exist. And so, I've always been kind of fascinated with that, and I actually watched a show where one of the scientists was talking about that he believes that there's other parallel dimensions, and that we are, we're just part of one of those alternate realities, I guess. And that's something I've always been kind of fascinated in too. I know it probably sounds kind of crazy, but what if that exists? I mean, what are your thoughts on it?
I do think it does. I also had a couple experts on my show at different times here in the last couple months, and one of them, wrote a book about it, has a PhD, and basically, talks about you can out-of-body experience where you can kind of go into a parallel world, like when you're sleeping at night. You kind of, like, some of those dreams you have might not actually be dreams. You could be actually, somehow going into a parallel universe. And I do think that there could be other planets like ours in the parallel universe. And it could be another Gary Anderson there, but instead of doing a talk show, he works at Denny as a fry cook. I don't know, but I do believe there's that possibility. Unless you can prove me that there isn't, I'm going to be open to it.
Well, and that's exactly my point. I mean, it could. I mean, if you think about the grand scheme of things with this, I mean, the possibilities could be endless. I mean, your life could be up to a certain point, could be exactly the same. Started out the same, but then, like you said, you might be a NASA engineer, as opposed to in another dimension, you might be flipping burgers at McDonald's, or a Wendy's, or
or
I mean,
Burger
or
King.
like I said, it could be a dimension where I'm president, of the United States, or head of the KGB, or it's. I mean, there's so many different possibilities and so many different scenarios that play out. It's like it's almost it's almost too much for you to comprehend. At least it is for me anyway.
Yeah, but
it sounds almost infinite.
Well, have you ever had a dream though at night when you wake up that the dream seemed so real that you sat there in bed and it took you a minute or two to kind of shake it out of your head and say, boy, that was a dream? Because you couldn't, when you first woke up, you couldn't comprehend is this a dream now when you're waking up, or what was going on before you woke up was, the real thing?
Yeah, I've had several dreams where I've been like, wow, it really kind of shook me down to my foundation. And, and another thing that's always fascinating with that was like deja vu, where you have dreams and then all of a sudden, you find yourself in a certain place listening, something, like you said, in a dream that happened and, and it happened to play out exactly the same way. Well, I think that's,
it happened to me. It happened, honestly, to me back in the 80s. I decided I was going to go buy a brand new van. And the night before I went to buy it, right, I had this dream that I bought the van I came home on this one particular road and I got hit. And, and my van was totaled out and all that stuff. And I could see the car, it hit me, and all that. And it was weird because then what happened is the next day I went out and bought the van, right? The salesman says, okay, are you going to put insurance on it? And this is before, computers. And I go, well, as soon as I get home, I'm going to call my insurance agent and transfer the insurance and put on it. Like an idiot, I went home the same way my dream was. Okay, because when I woke up, I knew the dream because I remembered the dream. So I'm going home on this back road coming from what they call Midway up here in near Kent, Washington. And I'm coming home this back road by all the farms, right? A guy swerves into my lane, and I'm doing like 45, 50. He's doing probably the same speed. He hits me head on. And the same thing I saw in my dream. The seat broke off, the bolts it sheared off that held the seat. I went flying back in slow motion to the back of the van, and I could see all this stuff, the front of the van, come towards me. It was really weird, but it was the same thing in my dream. Identical. And it really shook me up, and it has never left my brain. Now, did I go into a parallel world? Because I don't believe you can see the future unless you do shift into something. But, I don't know if you ever had anything weird like that happen to you, but it sure did to me.
I've had a lot of deja vu experiences, but mine have been mostly like, I guess what I would call just kind of trivial things. Like I would be, at a certain place and then maybe a certain song playing, or maybe certain individuals standing around, or somebody saying something. And, but yeah, I mean, yeah, that would definitely be terrifying. But most of mine has been fairly, like I said, just little trivial things. Like I know one time, I took my sons to the Comic-Con, and I was standing outside, and I remember having a dream that I was standing out kind of like at a balcony of some sort. And I remember cars going by, and I could hear music playing in the distance and things. And as I was standing there, it hit me. I was like, wow, I've been here before. Or at least it felt like I'd been there before. And, cause I had to look down, I saw the traffic, I could hear the music playing from one of the clubs, down the street. And it was like, wow, I know I've been here before. Of course, that's kind of the whole glitch in the Matrix. I know that's kind of a running joke there with, a lot of my science fiction friends. They'll tell me, hey, you just had a glitch in the Matrix. There's, yeah, of course you've been here before. It's the program's just malfunctioning and rewriting itself. But yeah, I'm not exactly sure if that that counts as like like you said, seeing in the future of some sort, like a parallel dimension, or perhaps maybe we've been abducted and maybe we're just somebody's planting images in our head, and like I said, kind of like a Matrix kind of thing. Maybe it just glitched and we saw it twice. That is always a possibility. We all could have been abducted by aliens by now and just don't know it. We're living in our own reality.
Yeah. Or on the other hand, we might be aliens ourselves and we don't realize it.
and that's entirely possible.